started. I think we missed the past couple of meetings, so I have a lot to share about where we are with the status of everything, but we'll start with, before I start the roll call, just reminded everyone this is a public meeting being recorded. And as always, we post the videos out on YouTube and also have a recording going here that Rachel's doing to help with the meeting minutes. So we'll start with roll call. Deb?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Pace?
Here.
April?
Here.
William?
Here.
And Lisa?
Here.
Wow, everyone. All right. Once again, welcome everyone. The next agenda item that we have is the review and approval of the last meeting minutes. Rachel?
Good afternoon, everybody. The last meeting was held
And I'm sorry,
on-
Rachel, you may want to come closer so the folks on the phone can hear you. Sorry about that.
The last meeting was held on August 14th. It was called to order at 1:01 p.m. The last meeting minutes from the July 10th meeting were reviewed and approved. Ms. Calvo gave an IVMV update for June 2018. Mr. Samuel gave a brief stakeholder outreach update. The policy and decision review was not reviewed at the meeting. Ms. Janice Timmons gave a phase 1 financial update, and the teams gave their project updates beginning with my DMV portal, renewal notification, SIDLIS and citation processing, DL issuance, and then that ended on page 3. There were 3 change requests reviewed at the meeting, change requests 127, 133, and 134. There were no communications update at the meeting, no questions at the meeting, and the meeting was adjourned at 1:37 p.m. And at the bottom you can see the items handed out in the meeting packet prior to the meeting.
Are there any questions about the meeting minutes? Okay, ask for approval of the meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes are approved.
All right, thanks, Jill. Next, we'll have the IVMD update.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this one will be the September report. This is as of the 30th of October for phase 1. Current risk state is amber with a scheduled performance index of 0.974. Total late tasks are about 4.98% of the schedule. Still have the one facet, organizational change management, that's amber. We are working with the organizational change management team on an action item plan for that one. All the key indicators are still within target, so no concerns there. And the SPI, CPI are right there in the middle as well. You will see that this SPI for this one did drop down a little bit, and so that's where you see that pretty big spike of days late, forecasted days late, 58.5. So the team, this is phase 1, so we're talking about moving the schedule and accepting dates at this time. So this is just showing all of the milestones. So schedule quality 94.3, so that's come up from the last report as well. Any questions on phase 1?
Stakeholder outreach is next. We were scheduled, I think, Jessica to give an update on we're scheduled to have focus group meetings for phase 1. You want to give an update on where we are with that, Jessica?
We're looking to reschedule the phase 1 DL issuance and my DMV portal focus group updates. Incore's going to reach out to Lisa to find out what dates they're available, but we're going to be performing that over WebEx.
And we're rescheduling because, was it the storm related?
Yeah,
We had, like the day before the hurricane was scheduled, decided to not do it.
All right. Any questions? And now, next stakeholder outreach update, the insurance testing, XML testing.
Yes, we had a technical conference call with the insurance industry on October 30th, and they still have a lot of technical questions that we're answering, and we're still going to continue having the conference calls with them once a month to try to get them through any of their questions. We have one vendor, which is Veris, that has 99 companies. They're very close to getting through with their structural testing, and we have two small insurance companies, Direct General and Ocean Harbor, that are almost done. So we have about 3, but Veris has 99 companies, so we only need 254 to get through structural testing. So that's a big chunk of them. So it's moving slow, but we're making progress little by little.
And just to follow up on what CT said, we've handled the situation with the insurance companies just as we've done with all the vendors. We try to have a meeting with them every few weeks to give them, or with them every month, I believe, to give them the opportunity to ask any questions that they have. You know, some of them have reported that they were a little slow getting started because they did not, although we've been talking about this for a little over a year now, they did not have resources to dedicate to the project because it wasn't crunch time for them. And I explained that it was crunch time for us, that we needed to get this moving and get the some resources from their organizations working on it. I believe they all are working on it now, but they had to wait, and, you know, in a larger organization like that until they could get the resources scheduled to start working on it. So, as she mentioned, we are close with Veris and we'll continue to have the meetings, although I do believe that in our last meeting, the questions were, we had less questions at the last conference call than we had the previous ones, and the questions were centered around just certain areas, certain functionality. It wasn't as broad as before, whereas I was starting to kind of wonder, but this time they were more focused on certain things. So hopefully once we get through the next call, everything, their understanding will continue to grow, and that we'll move closer with some other companies as well. So, any questions about where we are with the XML testing or rescheduling of the stakeholder focus groups? Any questions there? Okay. That's great. All right, so policy decision review. Just want to give you an update on where we are on some of the items that have been out there for a while.
So the first item is 4035, and the group added a question about whether we should create a guest logon. And aside from that, also, if they have the guest logon, should they use a credit card that is in their name in order to perform that photo purchase? But after some conversations, it was determined that we were going to do the guest logon in phase 2. So this item is deferred.
And part of that too is we'll have to have meetings to determine, and they may have already taken place, but we need to have meetings to determine which functionality would it would be okay for you to have a guest login on. So I know that we're still.
And they decided it was only gonna be on the motor vehicle transactions, which is why it was a good place to move it to phase 2.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So anything related to DL, because of obvious reasons, they feel like you would need to have an account to log on to the portal.
Correct.
Okay.
The next one, FRO2, this is having to do with the XML onboarding approach that I was just talking to you about. We're still monitoring that. As soon as we get a few people through structural testing, we'll know better what we're gonna do there, and I'll keep you guys updated, but that's still on the decision log until we get someone through structural testing. And the last one, FRO4, this is on RAP 3856, child support suspensions from DOR. We took this to the ESC, and the decision was made that the RAP would be processed in the production side, and also we would do a CR to fix the fees on the O&M side once it was done in production. So that RAP right now is currently prioritized as number 14. So that was just to see if they were going to do it in production and O&M. So we're going to do it in both. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that.
Okay. Any other updates for policy decision review? next on the agenda, we have the financial review for phase one. Janice?
Okay. As soon as this comes up, these are the financials through October 31st. So for phase one, we are in the process of sending in the LBR and the 4B and everything to downtown. It's highlighted red on here mainly because we expect some minor changes. We don't know what those are going to be yet. They haven't been finalized. And obviously the legislature has to approve any changes. So I'm just gonna leave that highlighted for the time being, and when we get that new information for next year, I'll make sure that gets updated. For phase one through October, our actuals are 2.7 on a budget of 7.5. We're on track for contracted services, expenses, and IB&B services. We expect those expenses those are for a lot of software renewal that we normally do mid-year to third quarter. So we'll see those starting to hit at that point. And then for fiscal year to date, again, 2.7, our actuals are a little bit higher, not much. It still creates zero variance unless you take it out several decimal places. For the month to date, October, our budget was $693,277, and our actuals were the same. So our remaining funds for this fiscal year are $4.8 million. And then just to give you an idea of where phase two is, you can see all the red. That's because that will be updated in the 4B and LBR request for this year. And then our actuals are 1.2 on a $5 million budget. A lot of the expense software and OGO will be later in the year, but our contracted services and IB&B services are on track. And then you can see the fiscal year to date, we're same thing, a slight variance between the actuals and the budget, but it's still overall a 0% variance. And we have 3.7 remaining on this fiscal year. And that's it, unless you guys have some questions.
Okay. Next, we have change request review, and Sherilyn's going to talk a little bit about change in process that we've had recently, and then I have some comments about that as well, so I'll let Sherilyn go first.
All right, good afternoon. So we don't have any specific change requests to go over today, but we have had a bit of a change in our process. And as you know, we've been having lots of change requests or requests for changes to some of the applications. And we've run out of runway for being able to absorb any more changes. In addition to the work remaining, we have lots of work remaining for a couple of the teams, several teams. And so we just really don't have any more room to absorb many change requests. What we're doing now is to take those change requests to the Executive Steering Committee to discuss those change requests with them. And we're not really doing anything that would, except if it's a dire emergency. And so everything else is going before ESC for approval. And at some point in time, after we have the approval, then the project managers will be working on completing change request forms for those changes that have been approved by the ESC board. So that's the major change that's going on. I'm not saying that we're accepting change requests that come in from product owners or other people. It's just that we're having to scrutinize them a lot more, and instead of having the product owners be able to approve the change request, they're going to ESC for approval before we're able to start working on creating the change request form or the development work.
And before we go into project updates, to talk about some of the changes that we've had, as Sherilyn mentioned, we've had numerous change requests that we have gone before ESC, and because the advisory board has not met, we've taken those to ESC and tweaked our process some, but we will bring those changes here and let you all know what those changes were. I think last count we were up to about 14 pages of change requests on a spreadsheet which the majority of those were approved. That is going to have an impact on our schedule. We have not made all the changes to the schedule because we're still trying to determine the impact. latest and updated schedule downtown for approval. We are in the process. I think Ms. Rose may have already talked a little bit with some folks downtown about that. We're now trying to determine the initial wave of the change request. That's about 2 months out. But with the latest, we're not sure. And one thing that we have to be aware of with the tax collectors is if that pushes us past the course, and it looks like it will, the original time that we thought we would be in piloting the system, the effect is the go live would go past where we thought it would go, which then impacts, which we can't do, the tax collectors into November, December during the heavy tax season. So this could have some implications to go live. Is there a period where we stop and then we pick up again with implementing? All of that we need to take into consideration. And also we're trying to do our best as well to mitigate any kind of effect that we would have on phase 2. Phase 2 development was supposed to start July, August, I believe, of next year. So we're trying to figure out, we still need developers starting that, but also try to get the bulk of these changes done. Not only are we having to, and I'm saying all this so when we pull up the stoplight report, y'all don't run out of the meeting. On top of that, we're also, there are legislative changes, there are RAPs that are being done as well. So not only does the team have to keep up with the changes that are given to us, we also have to monitor the RAPs that are coming through that April and her team have to do on the operational side of the house, but are those changes that we then also have to incorporate into motors modernization. We don't want to fix it in operations and then have to go out with a bug that wasn't fixed, or something, not necessarily a bug, even functionality that was requested that wasn't fixed in motors mod. So that is the task that we are dealing with right now, and trying to mitigate as much as possible any issues with phase 2, and also mitigate any impact to the busy season, tax season for the tax collector. So we're working through all of that. So the project managers are going through getting all those hours, trying to figure out what the impacts are. And I think the impacts are mainly on 2 of the teams, if I remember correctly. Not that, I said heavy impact with 2 of the teams. So, and you'll get to hear that now as they pull up the traffic light report and they go through their team updates. But I just wanted to put some context there as to what was going on, and not just the changes, but there's the RAPs as well, those changes that need to be made. So, all right. So why don't we do Scott first for project updates?
Thank you, Terry. Motors maintenance and financial responsibility, we'll get the update for that. The primary focus of the team is to mitigate bugs impacting core critical features, planned for the completion of phase 1 development scheduled to end September 12th, so we're about 2 months behind. The work that remains is the change stories supporting motors maintenance and FR letters and in the FR reports. The team is working across, although you see a sprint 27 up there and in your packet, we're working across 5 sprints, milestone I and milestone J, to complete development. The team is late on its commitment due to conflicting priorities supporting user acceptance testing, aiding insurance company, structural testing, which took a lot of our focus and our developer time, but we're living up to the commitment there, as you heard from CT. And then other teams other bugs reported against our application for the other teams. We didn't realize motors maintenance was going to be heavily used as a testing tool for those other teams, and we're working on that, mitigating that right now. So you notice that you were red in business, in business actions, in development and testing, and we're green in technical debt. You'll see up at the top of your breakout for the milestones a change request as well. We were supposed to start change request 115. This was to finalize the clearance process within financial responsibility. That was the key critical item that we actually committed to going into in September. And that one, as soon as we actually break away from our current obligation, we will be addressing that. For the milestone, you also see that we are running behind as well, about 2 months. Any questions or comments for motors maintenance or financial responsibility? Back to you, Terrence.
And before I go to the next, one of the other things I want to mention, and I like to tell the advisory board all the things, things that are going well and things we've struggled with as well. about changes, we talk about wraps. And the other thing is, and it's within the change requests or letters, that continue and has continued to be one of the things that has caused an impact to us as well. Although Coral told me this morning it's a lot better now. I told her once I see it, I will believe it. But trying to get everyone that needs to agree on letters and what the letters should say and the verbiage and everything. And there's definitely some room for improvement once we get to phase 2. We had a committee that started out as people leave the department and different people take their position and people take a look at them. People have difference of an opinion of what those letters should be and what they should say. But with all of this, you know, we want it to be right and we want everyone to be satisfied with what it says when it goes out. So we'll continue to look at those, but I hear that that situation may be better. Maybe that'll be a Christmas present for me. We'll see. But
Is there some lessons learned that we can address in phase 2?
oh yes.
We're gonna be at school a lot.
Yes, there will definitely.
So in phase 2, we don't address the same issue?
Yes. Those are, if I didn't say that, I meant to say that. That is
Okay.
definitely some things that, as we finish up, that we'll pull everybody together and at least have you in those meetings as well and kind of talk through, some of those things that we have seen and, definitely some room for improvement there. As far as how we get the approval on certain things. All right, so Scott, Andrea?
So good afternoon, just reporting on the My DMV portal. My DMV portal currently, as you can see on the stoplight, we're currently red. We still have open milestone G and H stories and functionalities that we're trying to complete. That was slated to end in August 7, 2018, so we're a few months over. But currently the team is refocused and we started back being sprint focused and we're now in a new sprint called Sprint 31. And within that sprint, we're completing the certified and mailed transcripts. We're also completing the CRS status to process updating. We're working on a couple of CRs that were legislatively mandated, which is change request 127, which is about the veterans fees. We're doing change request 130, which is about some recommendations we got from executive leadership on the way we were handling our account log on, as well as some other functionalities within my DMV portal. Change request 123 is a dashboard change, and we got that from the usability assessment that was done by Accenture. We're working on that. We're all basically completed testing that. We had another change request, PMC CR 408, which is what we were updating on the transaction activity tab. And the last one is a change request 141, which is a deaf and hard of hearing, which is a legislative mandate that we're also working on within this sprint. So, right now the team is within capacity within the sprint to complete this functionality. And some of the issues that have pretty much delayed us from being completed, not meeting our completion date for milestone G and H was the fact that we're still working through dependencies on the sanctions clearances. So that's the ongoing process for us, as well as we had a reduction in our development capacity. And also we've had we're doing bar development, and that's being done in both Portal and Orion, and our developer is not as experienced in the Orion environment as it is in the Portal, so that slowed us up as well. As well as there was new leadership for bar, so we had to go back and do some refinement in the stores and the functionality to align with the new leadership's recommendations. So, any questions for Portal?
And I want to jump around on the agenda a little bit. We have a communications update, and this was going to be part of that, but I want to pull it away and do it now if it relates to your project. Coral, do you want to talk about the Portal focus group that you're looking at?
Yes, we're working on putting together protocols for focus groups for the portal. We met last week to discuss the different categories, demographics, what kind of transaction types and functionalities we're going to work on in the portal. We're trying to identify how many browsers we can work in, and then we're going to create a spreadsheet to kind of figure out how many people we're going to need for these focus groups. Andre, do you have any?
Yeah, so what the reason she's saying that is because we're reaching out to is it the team from the University of Florida that, another state agency is using to help us to develop our focus group. So that's one of the things that, so we're trying to come up with criteria that they would need to help us formalize that focus group.
So, and we're looking forward to that feedback, to see if there are any recommendations that they have. So, as she stated, they're trying to work on the different groups that we'll have now, and since we get that going, we'll also make that information available to the advisory board. So, all right, any questions? All right, Sonia.
First with SIDS and
Yes,
citation
and then
processing.
I'll do renewal.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. So an update on the SIDS and the citation processing team. Our milestone shows that we're behind, it shows red, but we have actually completed the milestone that's up there, milestone E. And the change request, we're still working in that iteration. The team is working mainly on structural testing right now and UAT. For structural testing, we are trying to get certification for SIDS 5.3.3. We're actually in the first pass of structural testing. We completed the first pass once, but because our primary tester or lead tester, the person who was responsible for carrying us through the testing, she left the department on Friday. We wanted to go back through the first pass again so that our new lead would understand the process. Because if you could have some errors in the first pass, but if we have errors in the second pass, they kick us out, it's not pretty. So we want to get through the first pass, make sure all the errors or bugs are fixed, and then move on to the second pass. So we're in the process of completing the first pass of structural testing for the second time. I think we have about 5 drivers remaining, and there are 12 drivers total in the first pass. We do have a couple of change requests that we're working on. It's a total of 70 hours of change requests, well, we're not working on them yet, that we have submitted for approval to the ESC. So if we get approval on those this week, we'll start working on those on Friday. Any questions for SIDS or citation processing?
I have one. So your development, with the exception of the change request, you're saying you all are.
Right, we are completely done with milestone E. And for the change request iteration, development is mostly done there. We've got one story that remains to be developed under the CR iteration right now.
Okay.
But we still need all of our people. They're not up for grabs, Joe.
Scott, I'll talk to you after this.
Thank you. Start drinking.
All right. Okay, and Sonia's other team is renewal, but I told her I would do renewal. So basically, as you know, we released the renewal system a few weeks ago, new JSON file format, released the file, and I got the report that there's some issues with the files. As a matter of fact, at one point I heard the files corrupt, and then once I got one of the vendors on the phone, we figured out that basically we had, I believe, 3 or 4 fields that were null, that was impacting the vendors being able to process. So we have since resubmitted the file to our stage environment or test environment, so the vendors can start their testing, the print vendors. And we're having a conference call with them tomorrow to make sure everyone is okay. These are the print vendors, the ones that are responsible for printing the renewal notices. Like I said, there are a couple fields that they told us that they needed that were null in the file that we've since populated, and so we're working through that with them. Once that is, they say that they're fine, we can release the file for production, and either the January or February renewal notices, they can start using the JSON file. We've actually had one vendor really tell us that's what we want to use. We don't want to go back and use the old file. In the meantime, to mitigate the impact, we are letting the vendors use the legacy renewal file to make sure they get the renewal notices out for all of the tax collectors. And if things go well on this call tomorrow, and there's no new problems or issues reported with values being null in the file, then when they determine that they're ready, they can move forward with using the new JSON file. So, did I mess that up? Okay. All right. Joe?
Yes, okay, for deal issuance, we're ready. We should have completed development back on the 12th of September, we're obviously over 2 months late at this point, and we're projecting that we won't, based on all the change requests we have, won't complete development until sometime towards the end of January of next year, and then testing will go probably another month beyond that because we've lost some of our testing team to multiple other projects the department has running at the same time. So currently what we're working on in this sprint is we're working on kind of the end-of-day functions, so that the cashier closeout and then the reporting that comes from that. We're also working on voids and the void functionality, and some batch jobs that we've defined as critical batch jobs, and they're critical from the standpoint that the data model has changed, and we need to get these done because of that change in the data model, the way the data is pulled. The other thing we're working on are approved change requests. An example of that is RAP 3498, which was the redirection of tax collector fees that were collected. And that's, right now, it's on hold a little bit, trying to work through some of those rules. So we continue to work through all of that. As I said, the team hopes to wrap up development sometime in January, based on the approved change request at this point. Right now, our policy and procedure group is continuing to meet, and Dana Olvera has already forecasted to that team that based on the change in schedule, we're going to probably need to adjust the time period that we needed that team to work. And so she sent out that meeting, and what they're doing right now is they're having teleconference meetings now through the end of the year. They have an on-site meeting scheduled in January. At that meeting in January, they'll take a look at the remaining work that they need to do and set up a schedule to figure out when they'll actually be able to wrap up the policy and procedure update for the operations manual. As far as risks that are impacting the team, the first one is Risk 85, and what this is that right now the department needs to do an upgrade to BLS 3.2. That's supposed to be completed by April of next year, and if that work is done, that obviously means we're going to have to do that same change. So I know that right now the department is investigating an extension from AMLA to be able to change that date, to get a waiver for that date. Issues that are impacting us, the first one is issue 39, and across the whole program we're currently down 2 developers. We had some advertised positions, we filled the ASP 3 position internally, but what that means is that opened up an ASP 2 position. So we're still looking at 2 developers across the program that need to be filled. Another issue, issue 59, is batch vendors, and what we've been finding as we talk to some of these different folks that we're doing business with through a batch process, some of them are willing to make changes, some of them don't want to make changes in the process. And as we're trying to modernize, the goal will be to modernize that approach, whether it's a file format or going from a flat file to a web service. And so we're trying to, where it makes sense, to truly try to encourage those folks to change that process. So there have just been some struggles with some of those changes. The other issue, issue 93, is initially we thought we had redone the batch transcript process. So there was a lot of different vendors and requesting parties who would get a flat file of data that basically replicated the batch transcript. And we are moving to let them use the existing process for those transcripts. Well, one of the big ones, consumers, that is FCCC, and they originally told us they wouldn't be able to even start development until January of next year. And since that time, we've met with them, they've come back, and they actually said that they would be wrapping up development by the end of the year, which would be fine from a timeline perspective where we're at. So we're just going to keep an eye on that to make sure that they stay on target. Another open issue we have is issue 95, and this is related to an external security service that we have. This service that the department is currently consuming is the wrong version, but unfortunately the newer version, we've been working with the Department of Justice, the team that developed after them, the lead developer died, and so they're struggling trying to get the updated specifications to us so that we can actually make the updates we need to make. So we're still working through that with the Department of Justice for that particular issue. From a change request perspective, we already kind of mentioned that we have, we end up with nearly 700 hours of change requests that have been approved in the last month. That obviously had an impact on our schedule. We also know that we do have some additional pending change requests that will come. I mentioned this external security service. once we get the specifications, we gotta go back and investigate what we need to do to change. We mentioned wraps, I know that there's been a lot of wraps that have gone on, we've gotta do an analysis of those and see which ones impact the team. So those are kind of the big things we're looking at from a change request perspective. Any questions for me for deal issuance? Thank you.
So based on the team updates, I believe from all with the changes that we had, the teams that, it's Joe's team and Scott's, so the ones that have been probably heavily impacted with the changes, with the change requests. So those are the teams that we're focused on trying to see what we can do to get the changes done quickly and get us into a situation we can move into a pilot. Cheryl, you want to give us an update on where we are with Informatica?
Informatica team is also behind. And they are working right now trying to satisfy the entry criteria for the testing that the Systems Evaluation Unit group has to do. And they won't be able to start officially their testing until that entry criteria is met. And they are doing some, the SEU group is doing some preliminary testing to try to flesh out some of the initial problems with some of the mappings, the CDC mappings or workflows. I don't know if you, I use those terms interchangeably, but the mappings are just the processes that move the data between different tables. And so that's what the Informatica team is working on right now. And they're down one developer too, so they're down from 3 to 2 developers. Any questions on Informatica?
And Craig, can you give us an update on OCM activities?
Yeah, thanks, Terrence. Good afternoon, everyone. With organizational change management, we've made some significant progress since July. But two of the initiatives we wanted to make everybody aware of. The first one is the change readiness survey that we're getting prepared to do. The goal of the change readiness survey is to do an internal member readiness survey. And this survey will ask about awareness of the motorist modernization program, the effectiveness of our communications program. It'll ask about the support from the department leadership and across the organization. It'll check the level of understanding of the program, and it'll check the degree to which department supervisors and managers are prepared to facilitate change. And then the results of this assessment will be used to help identify areas of focus for the organizational change management team to customize transition and communication plans for the department. The other thing that we've been working on is our Change Champion program, and the Change Champions we've started to do that and communicate that with our leadership as well as our bureau chiefs who have helped us identify some of the Change Champions already. The Change Champions will be used to promote the modernization project, help identify issues and risks with their teams, gather feedback on the change, accelerate the problem-solving issues, foresee potential areas of resistance and avoid problems with resistance, and then be an advocate and primary point of contact for their area during and after the project. So those are the two big things that we're working on with organizational change management. So, any questions or?
Okay. All right. That we already had our communications update. With that, are there any general questions that we can answer for phase one?